Three thick bricks.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Three Thick Bricks, a monthly podcast where we explore the music of Jethro Tull album by album. My name is Robin, and I'm joined at Hampstead Fair by Brent and Adrian. I'm the one wearing the jet black Mac. How are you guys?
Feeling like a dead duck.
Well, since you mentioned ducks, I'm going swimmingly.
Oh, that's excellent.
Swimmingly.
Excellent.
Yes.
I've been trying to play this chicken fence, but I have to say my fingers are bleeding because it's really rough on the hands.
What, a chicken fence?
Yeah, isn't it the chicken fence you came to play, or am I hearing the lyric?
Chicken fancier.
Chicken fancier. Yeah.
Straight into the Mondegrins.
So it's not, and the chicken fence you came to play.
No, the chicken fancier came to play with his long red beard.
And his sister's weird. She drives a lorry, apparently. Unless I misheard that.
Is that sort of saying she's a lesbian? Is that what they're sort of inferring?
Well, I've got a feeling, and I'm not certain, that chicken fancier might be a
Euphemism?
an inappropriate 2021 terms euphemism for
Chicken fucker? Is that what we're going?
LGBTQ.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not inappropriate.
Oh, okay.
What is if you're the chicken?
Yeah, does the chicken get any say in this?
Well, that's interesting because Pink Flamingo. Have you guys ever seen Pink Flamingo?
No.
The John Waters movie that came out in the early 70s, and there is a man who has sexual relations with a chicken in that.
Oh,
So this is
consensual?
clearly a throwback to that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the most tasteless movie ever made, or something he was trying to create. Anyway, never mind.
Really?
Yes, yes. He actually Divine. Do you remember Divine?
Yes.
He was his muse, and Divine eats dog shit at the end, like literally scoops it off the sidewalk.
Well, dogs do it, so why not?
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're just trying to pre-gross us out so that
Everything else later will seem like, child prostitution. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's right. Yeah, who cross-eyed Mary? Oh, that's nothing. Oh, this is a good start.
So 1970s, the decade that taste forgot, apparently.
So I consulted 1001 albums you must listen to before you die, and they had a number in 1971, but these were the 11 that caught my eye. Sly and the Family. Yeah, Sly and the Family Stone. There's a riot going on. Marvin Gaye. What's going on?
oh yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Carole King. Tapestry.
Mm.
A movie I've seen recently. Isaac Hayes. Shaft. So.
Shaft.
Yeah, a real cultural.
Damn right.
Yeah, that's right. It's an interesting film, but a bit dated. But the music's great. Rolling Stone, Sticky Fingers, which had Brown Sugar and Wild Horses on it, amongst other things. John Lennon, Imagine. I don't know who John Lennon was, but I think people quite like this album.
Apparently, he used to be in some band, but they broke up.
Yeah. The Doors, L.A. Woman.
Oh yeah.
Don McLean, American Pie. Wow, that's
that's a big one. Yep.
Yeah, huge. Led Zeppelin 4, which had Stairway to Heaven and Levee Breaks on it.
Breaks. And Black Dog. I think we'll be talking about that shortly.
T-Rex, Electric Warrior. A bit of which had Bang the Gong on it, amongst others. And finally, David Bowie, Hunky Dory, which had Life on Mars and Changes on it.
Some great songs.
71. Yeah. So some really good albums came out in 1971, that's for sure.
Well, I think that's why we're here. But
Yes.
we might not all be in agreement, but let's say some iconic albums came out, and if you say anything, I think you're going to have to say that this is an iconic album, whatever you think.
Isn't it iconic, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Aqualung.
Ironically iconic. So.
Yeah. I mean, Aqualung, these sort of best albums of the 70s, best rock albums. I mean, Aqualung is usually features on those. It really kind of launched Jethro Tull into the stratosphere, I think.
I think it tends to be what people think of when they think of, even people who don't know Jethro Tull will probably know, maybe Thick as a Brick or Aqualung, and the image of the cover is just.
Yep.
If you mention, if you do any search online, Aqualung will appear as the cover. It's really really a signature album, a magnum opus for them. To some extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether or not you whatever you think of the album, I think it's really one of their signature albums and possibly their most best-selling.
Yes, it is. It is their best-selling, and I think it's one of those albums. I've heard bands talk about this before, where they make an album which basically they never have to worry again. You know what I mean? Once they make that album, and this is the one.
It's their dark side. It's their dark side of the moon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're 2112, whatever you want.
Yes. We got it in there.
So it was recorded through most of 1970 in the UK and released in 1971. It's 42 minutes, 55 seconds. This is Wikipedia now. I got all this from that. Produced by Ian Anderson and Terry Ellis. So Ian Anderson gets a production gong for this one as well. As we would expect, Anderson is on lead vocals, acoustic guitar and flute. Martin Barre, whatever we call him, electric guitar and recorder. So that's Martin Barre on the recorder. Jeffrey Hammond, backing vocals and bass guitar, although Glenn Cornick was also on bass guitar for some of it as well. I think there's a sort of crossover.
Do we know which tracks?
The two.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Hammond joined, didn't he, in this era? The thing that amazed me was I saw an interview with Martin Barre talking about him joining, and he was saying, we had to get someone in because we needed someone to play the bass, but Jeffrey, he's not really a musician. He didn't have his own bass, so we had to get him a bass, put chalk marks on it. And I'm thinking, in 6 months, he's gone from not being a musician, not being a bass player, to playing on a full studio album. I mean, this is, this is some sort of industrial grade not being a musician. Like, compared to us, he's like the greatest musician we could ever hope to be. But for them, I guess it's just like an Olympic athlete going, guy won the local fun run. He's nothing. He's not an athlete. Yeah, but to us, he seems like an incredible musician. But to them, he was just like, we kind of got him in because we needed the help, but he's not a musician. I just couldn't fathom it.
That's funny.
And they went from a really good bass player to someone who needed chalk marks on there. I just, I don't. Who knows what was going on? But.
Now, Glenn Cornick is on early versions of My God, apparently. It's, again, according to Wikipedia, and Wandering Again and Wandering Aloud.
Yeah, My God's quite an old song.
I guess. I'll talk about that when we get to it, Yeah, I think it was noticeable, though, that the bass did not have the prominence it had in the previous three albums. We really missed those big, obvious bass sort of riffs and solos, which is a shame. But
I think, I've heard Ian Anderson say that we should talk about the studio, but the production was difficult and fraught, and the conditions weren't ideal. And he thought that the production, they weren't confident with the production and the outcome. Okay. I think it sounds like one of their most polished albums. I think it sounds clean and well produced. And what is really noticeable to me is that we've talked about integration of instruments. This is not my favourite album, but it's almost perfect, and it's a Tull album. The flute solos, the electric guitar, the riffs, the acoustic work, the piano is just so well integrated into this album. It's really, really well produced from my point of view, and I've always thought it has been.
I agree.
Since
and
I
on
started listening to it.
On the engineering side of things, I kind of thought, I didn't realise they'd had these problems you just mentioned. To me, it just sounded like, we've done our experimenting and now we've kind of found a good place to be in. We know what we're doing, and we've just got a very solid, very even, distribution of the engineering throughout it all. Not too many tricks. There are a few here and there, but it's quite pared back and well done, I think. So from that side of thing, I thought it was great, very solid.
quite a surprise to hear that they weren't happy with it, because I think it's a huge step up in the quality of recording. Were you? I didn't want to jump in, Robin. Were you going to talk about where it was recorded, or?
I didn't. I mean, it was recorded in the UK in 2 locations, and I know one of them was in like a converted church. I think that was the New Ireland Records, and Led Zeppelin was recording in a smaller studio, which I think Ian Anderson wished they were in that one, but they were in this large, cavernous, cold space.
I think it's very interesting that the two. I think Zeppelin 4 is their magnum opus. I'm sure I'm not a Zeppelin expert or a huge Zeppelin fan, but 4 is really what a lot of people think about when they think about their albums. Certainly my favourite of their albums. And Tull's most iconic album was being recorded at the same time in the same studio. Yes. I just find that very interesting.
About a similar trajectory, haven't they? I mean, they both started around the same year as well, and building up to their best album allegedly, or arguably in the 4th one.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Jeffrey Hammond is also, not only is he slated on bass guitar, but also alto recorder and odd voices. I'm assuming that's him going, Mary, at the beginning of Cross-Eyed Mary. So he sounds like he's a bit of a character, which probably just was a nice counterpoint to maybe some of the seriousness. I'm not sure.
He's an artist,
Yeah.
Well, I think he does a lot of voice work in some later albums too. So,
Right.
And maybe he was there for his, for his character.
Yes, John Evan, who I think he had an incredible impact, and I think Ian Anderson talks about the impact he had on the musicality, was there for piano, organ, and mellotron. So, on the keyboards, and then Clive Bunker on the drums, and this was Clive Bunker's last album. The other person who I think, there's other people who are part of the engineering crew and others, but Dee Palmer, I think, also deserves a call out for the orchestral arrangements, because I think they also have a significant impact on some songs as well. So, yeah. So this was the breakthrough smash album, really. I think, we've talked before about how Jethro Tull, they kept kind of messing with albums, trying to get albums right for the US market, and I'm not sure, with sort of limited success in some ways. This was their breakthrough album. It reached number 4 in the UK, number 7 in the US, number 3 in Australia. So higher in Australia, and by 1989 it was certified 3 times platinum in the US. So there you go. That's interestingly, only one single, Hymn 43, which reached the dizzy heights of 91 on the Billboard Hot 100. Wow. So this is not a singles album.
I find that surprising, that Hymn 43 and that this whole album, because I think it deals with that song in particular is aimed right at the heart of something that's quite sort of fundamental to a lot of the American culture. So
fundamentalist, possibly even.
Yes.
I suppose when it comes to singles, there would have been a lot, and I remember, it's less so now, but in the past there was the album list. It's a bit like, you were an album listener, you weren't into sort of silly singles. And so the singles charts were more ephemeral, if I can use that word, poppy. Whereas people who were seriously into music did, bought albums. Yep. And I can imagine that that's why this album did particularly well as an album rather than sort of singles. And they didn't seem to put much effort into actually releasing singles from it, which is only one single.
But that's fascinating, because some of the songs on it are probably some of Tull's most recognisable songs. Yeah. You would assume they were singles.
I know. I mean, the Aqualung,
and Locomotive Breath, and absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So really, I mean, the thing that's astonishing for me is, like, again, and we said this before, but when was this? When did that come out? 68.
68. Yep.
This is 71, so we're talking 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, I just can't believe they've come so far in just 3 years. I mean, it's just jaw-dropping, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a couple of interviews with Ian from around this period, and one of the things he said, like he was asked, "Oh, what's your, what other music of the times do you like and enjoy?" And he said basically, I try not to listen to other people's music because I want to make the music I want to make. And also, I don't want to make the same music or album over and over again. If I've made an album that's next album is like the previous one, I'd consider that a failure. So he has quite a different mindset to what would probably be the case for many bands, which would just be find a formula and stick to it. He's deliberately saying, I don't want a formula. I want to change things up. So, I find that really interesting, and that kind of
that bears out over their career, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So one of the big questions I wanted to ask, we were talking about the transition from This Was to this. We've mentioned, and I'm never sure I've really understood my take on it, but Robin, you've mentioned a number of times, and this is something that gets mentioned a lot about Jethro Tull, and particularly now we're coming to this album and beyond, is what is progressive rock. Because when I think of progressive rock, and prog comes to mind as almost a dirty word. I'm thinking of, I don't want to criticise bands, but yes, and bands making albums about Lord of the Rings and fantasy themes or sort of weird cosmic themes and very self-indulgent type of music. But that's I feel like progressive rock is more than that, and I never really pigeonholed Jethro Tull. I'm thinking it might, if you describe them as progressive rock, maybe we're talking about fusions of various styles, playing with keys and time signatures and lyrics in creative ways. But I thought it might be worth bringing up, because certainly with this album we're starting to go into that territory of talking about progressive rock as something that Jethro Tull is defined by.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those terms that's hard to pin down. It's kind of, it when you hear it, but I think you're right. I think one of the kind of signatures of progressive rock is the borrowing of various styles, classical, jazz, and others. I mean, Queen uses operatic styles, in theirs and things like that. But I think the other thing that I think about is class. And I think that a lot of progressive rock bands, the members were middle class, and traditional rock is very working class, right? Or has folk roots. So a lot of these, whether we're talking King Crimson, whether we're talking Jethro Tull, whoever we're talking about, they tend to be middle class men who might have gone to college and have ideas about art and music.
More intellectualized.
Exactly. So not kind of your working class, much more direct, down to earth, more straightforward, to use those terms, in class terms. And hence the reaction where punk was very working class and championed the sort of everyday.
Yeah, it sort of blew through that ideal.
Yeah, exactly. That was all just middle class pretension. And I talked before about Blur versus Oasis. It's a similar kind of thing, right?
Certainly Jethro Tull do this to some extent, is experimentation, particularly with maybe chord sequences, time signatures, keys, all of which again is a bit intellectualizing of the music, but it can produce really good results. So the linked question, which is a big question for this album,
for bonus points,
maybe we wanted to discuss it later, is what is a concept album? And is this a concept album? Is this something we want to discuss now or later?
Let's discuss now. Yes, discuss.
So So it's considered by many to be a concept album.
Yeah, and I've seen people saying, all the songs are about religion, and Aqualung, they mention the Salvation Army. It's about religion. And it's saying, no. Cross-eyed Mary, it's actually about the Virgin Mary. No. To me, it just isn't. Yes, some of the songs, especially on side 2, obviously more overtly to do with religion. Yes, there's social commentary. But to me, it doesn't make a concept album, not in the way that the concept albums like Thick as a Brick or Passion Play or Tommy even, are. So, yeah, to me, it doesn't make a concept album.
Robin?
No, I agree. I understand why.
What?
I understand why people do that. I mean, for me, and it's one of the reasons I kind of am a bit lukewarm on this album, is that there's 3 groupings of themes on this album. There's the sort of acoustic folk songs, which tend to be personal revelation. There's the seedy Dickensian slices of life type songs. And then there's this sort of God and religion type songs. And they're all sort of mashed together. They're quite different lyrically, musically, and in style. And so what I think happens is that people were trying to make sense of this as a coherent album. And the way that they answer that is by saying, well, it must be a concept album, because that's the only way you can explain it and make sense, because it isn't. They're really just 3 groupings of songs mashed together on the one album. So
I'd agree. I don't think it's a concept album. No. I think we've talked about this, but for example, with Benefit has some fairly strong themes running through it. But I think for me, a concept, again, it's almost a bit of a dirty word. It is something that is planned. Yep. As an entire concept with an entire thread through the album, and everything that's done is done with that in mind. Whether it be an extended narrative or exploration of the soul, the cosmos, or whatever. Yep. Whereas this album, this album for me is no more a concept album. If this is a concept album, then so is This Was, which is concept on the, it's all the themes of woman, you've done me wrong. So, it's not, and I think that the cover is so iconic, and the first 2 songs link a specific character together, and it just, I think that's just solidified in public perception and critical perception that this must be a concept album. And I think there's a whole lot of mental gymnastics that people go through to try and tie the themes of the songs together. I don't feel it's an awkward mashup, and we'll discuss this. I think it's a breathtakingly proficient album with a huge amount of variety to it, that shows a huge amount of skill and professionalism and creativity. I think Jethro Tull demonstrate their virtuosity across this album, but I don't think that it's an intentional concept album, even though there are some songs which are conceptually like each other. I just don't think that's appropriate. And I think when you compare to other concept albums, which Jethro Tull will indulge in, this is not. For my money, this is not.
And I agree with you on the, they show a great range of musical styles and whatever, but if we look back to, say, This Was, it seemed just like a random mashup of songs, whereas here there's like an ebb and flow to how the album goes between the different styles and whatever. And I think it works really well.
So do I. We'll talk about that, and there might be some disagreement on that. But
I think also concept albums don't need to be both sides. And you can get a concept album that's sort of got one side and then sort of that kind of thing.
Could the concept album just be one song then?
No, I think there's a concept song in it. Well, he did label the first side Aqualung, I believe, on the vinyl. My vinyl, I think, is labelled Aqualung on the first side, and God on the second.
I mean, it doesn't help that the 2 sides were labelled. One side's labelled God, and the other side's labelled whatever. That kind of suggests that there's an intention. You're talking about the intentionality. It sort of suggests there's a themic intentionality that doesn't really exist. The thing I would say is it's a very, very, like you say, it's a varied album, but to me, the word whiplash is where I go, because you go from Cross-Eyed Mary to Cheap Day Return, and when you get into those.
I think that's very effective.
It's such a massive shift that you have to try.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, but Robin, you read a newspaper and you said it was too kaleidoscopic. So, I mean, for you, you just don't appreciate nuances and changes. You're stuck in the mud. Open your mind with drugs, possibly, if needed.
But I think we could all agree that it's not a concept album. I think.
No, I don't
think so.
Well, I think we all agree on that, but
a lot of people
I'm not sure
don't.
everyone else does.
And Ian Anderson didn't. I think his reaction to this was surprise that people were.
Yeah, maybe he didn't know that someone called side one God and side two Aqualung or whatever.
Did ask for it a bit, but
yeah.
Yep.
And you're right. The mental gymnastics that people go through to try and link them all, I mean, is just it's pretty funny, really.
People take out of something what they take out of, but I don't.
And if it means it for them, I think I've said this before. Once the art is out there, you don't control how people consume it. So if them it's a concept album, that's great.
Yeah. And look, if someone came to me and said, "Look, Robin, here's $1 million. Make a musical out of Aqualung," I could link them. I could link them together. I mean, you could do it.
You could do it. I'd do it for $100.
Yeah, but that's the other thing about prog rock. Prog rock is linked to concept albums as well, and
that's why the two questions I thought were linked.
Yeah, and it's interesting reading the Rolling Stone review of Aqualung.
Ooh,
was not Jack Shadoyan? He was fired apparently.
No. And it's a very positive review, but they talk about implicit in the review is the idea that progressive rock bands create concept albums. It's almost a given that you would do that. They say in the Rolling Stone review in 1971, well, you get to a stage as a rock band where you do a concept album, almost like it's a given, and so. They just assumed this was Jethro Tull reaching that kind of stage of sophistication. So concept albums were sort of seen at the time as you've reached a certain level of musicianship and sophistication, and it's time to create one, so to speak.
I don't think it's this album, but
no.
I think, however,
yes, not too far in the future.
In the future, so maybe there's some truth in it. Do we have anything else to say about the album as a whole before we dive into?
Yes, a deep dive into Aqualung.
So this is probably one of the most famous Jethro Tull songs. Not just the fact that its title is linked to the imagery of the character.
An absolute pillar of their live performance, wasn't it, too?
So, I mean, there's a lot to it. I mean, before we talk about what it's about, I think that it reminds me, not musically, but in the way it's structured, it reminds me of Michael Collins, and I think it's him progressing that idea of externalizing and internalizing perceptions of
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good point.
Through to both lyrically and musically, and I think it's a progression of that idea in Michael Collins. And I've always understood that. I didn't really understand it about Michael Collins until we'd discussed it, but I can see parallels between the approach to these two songs.
Yeah. And musically, it's really like a mini version of the entire album, because there's the rock, there's folk, it has it really sort of says this is what we're going to be covering on the entire album, and here it all is in a nutshell.
No flute. No flute.
Oh, there's no flute in it. You see, I just assumed there was.
No,
wow.
No.
Wow.
It features very prominently on the rest of the album.
But not this song.
Not this
How did
song.
I miss that? Wow.
But there's enough going on. So
and when you see him live, he's far too busy leaping up and down and doing the whole Aqualung breathing thing up the front to play the flute, I guess. And the way he performs it is incredible. I mean, it just yeah, from the live performance we saw, it was a standout to me. Whenever I see a video of him redoing it, it just brings those memories back. He just really got into it every time.
What do you think of the use of sort of the way they treat his voice so it sounds like it's coming from a radio? Or
To
me, it was like, the underwater noise. Yeah,
very affecting, isn't it?
Deep sea diver sounds. It's meant to be drowned. So there's the two. We talked about the two movements. There's that very. I actually don't like the. A lot of people think it's classic Jethro Tull. The guitar, the electric guitar riff at the beginning and the end, and the sitting on a park bench thing. Yep. I find that quite jarring and uncomfortable. In the same way, maybe that I found. Even more than I found that passage in Michael Collins. I won't keep referring back to Michael Collins. Musically, I'm not I love the centre. I love the middle part of this song. I find that uncomfortable. I know what they're doing. It's meant to be uncomfortable and confronting because they're portraying the suspect derelict who's watching the children play through the. That's the external perception before you actually get the more
the internal version.
The more whether it's empathic or sympathetic we can discuss, but it's a very famous opening to an album and to a song. I'm very happy to bypass that musically to get to the middle of it. I don't fast forward, but I just don't pay much attention to it. But even though I know what's being done there,
I think to me it's a proof that a great riff can take you quite a long way, and I think it is a great riff.
I'm not
at
sure.
The start there, and more importantly, though, it's the contrast that it sets up with that second part that makes that second part seem all the more beautiful and poignant.
I think it's exactly but so it is interesting. I think it's meant to be a social commentary, and I know he and his wife were. Didn't she write the lyrics for it?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, especially the snot line. Apparently, in Anderson's, I would never have thought of having this lyrics about snot in a million years, and that was all down to her apparently.
All right, so it was obviously an attempt at social commentary. Is it successful, or is it?
I think it's successful. I mean, as a kid listening to this, I was probably a bit. Blind to others' problems and those sorts of things, and probably opened my eyes a bit and made me think, stopped me in my tracks a bit. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, maybe they've got a bit of a point here. And if the more you think about it, the more you listen to it, I think the more that is driven home to you.
You're talking about parts of the album being a parade of grotesques, Robin, like a freak show almost.
Yeah, and. It is very Dickensian, and it makes me think about around this time there was a very successful single about I can't remember who did it. I'm sorry. Let me take you by the hand and take you through the streets of London. I'll show you something. It'll make you change your mind, and it's about people who are homeless and down and out. Now that is just a straight up call.
Can you tell me you're lonely?
That's right. It's a straight out call for empathy. But what Anderson does here, I think, is quite brilliant because he reinforces your own prejudices at the start. Here's this filthy, dirty old man. We are, all of us at times are disgusted and repelled by people who are homeless. They smell bad. They look, we're scared of them. Yeah. And then what he does is, like you say, Brent, in the middle of the song, we then understand why Aqualung is the way that he is, and we come to it, and then when he comes back to the sitting on a park bench, we don't react the same way because we now understand to some degree why he is the way that he is. So rather than just saying, "Hey, we should care about the homeless, let me take you by the hand," he takes us on a journey to empathy. From disgust and asks us to be more empathic of the homeless and the sort of what's the word, the underclass, but he does it in a way that's confronting because he's confronting our own prejudices at the same time.
I know, it's very cleverly done.
Yep.
Is it empathic?
I mean,
we get we get taught look, he could write songs with empathy. We've discussed this, but certainly professionally for me, we get drilled into us the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yeah.
And sympathy is often paternalistic and pitying, which is not necessarily positive.
No.
And I don't know where I sit with this. I think the intention is good. I think it's fantastically executed.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's actually has that genuine empathy, as opposed to pity and voyeurism, I don't know.
Because he says, you poor old sod, that's sympathy. That's not empathy, right? You poor old sod,
that's
you poor
right.
bastard.
Yeah.
But
Aqualung, my friend, don't you start away uneasy is warm. The central part of it makes the song. The bookends are there for a reason, but musically they don't do anything for me. Make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, which is, I guess, what they're supposed to do. That central... the acoustic work is fantastic, and that you were talking about the modification of the voice. I mean, I love where it changes from that. I'm not usually excited about his voice being modified. It really works here because it's meant to have that drowning underwater feel. You take your rattling last breaths with deep sea diver sounds, and my favourite line, probably on the whole album, is the flowers bloom like madness in the spring. Yeah. It's just that the horror of that sort of mad existence when even beauty and life are distorted and ugly and frightening is just that's a great line that just that sums up the whole song. So it's very sharp. There's no question about it. But whether or not it comes across as it's supposed to, I'm still not sure. It's a challenging song. And if I'm still, all these years later, still wondering about it and analysing it, that's possibly a positive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting. He's not holding out a hand of support or help. He's still, you know what I mean? I'm talking about whether it's Anderson or it's the other person. Aqualung is oblivious or just does his whatever he's doing. It's not about being rescued or does he want to be rescued. So it's not got there's no easy kind of solution either, which is interesting. I wonder about the cover because apparently there was some controversy around the cover because originally the idea was to use a picture of a homeless person, and then instead Anderson posed for the picture, and I always thought it was supposed to be in Anderson on the cover, acting like Aqualung. I'm just not sure whether, or is it? I'm just not a bit unsure about that actually, because the two seem to be intertwined at some level. In terms of his persona, and I'm not sure whether the cover is Anderson or is it Aqualung or is it both?
Well, it's both, isn't it? I mean, like Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die. He likes putting himself onto the covers in the persona of the characters in the album, I think. So, yeah.
But it's not supposed to be him, but it does get sort of equated in people's mind with him. And it doesn't look too dissimilar from where he looks around this period anyway. So.
No, and the other thing about Aqualung on the cover, if you just take it's Aqualung, is Aqualung's not pleading to you. He's not looking at you with pleading eyes for help.
Oh, no.
He's cackling away at something, seeing cross-eyed Mary across. He is oblivious to your kind of concern for
regard.
him. He doesn't give a shit about that.
No, he's gone. He's gone. Yes.
Yeah.
So, he's unsalvageable, which makes the song even more uncomfortable. But
yes, it does.
I was just going to say Martin Barr's guitar solo has to be mentioned. It is very good, and it does rate in in top 100 or top 50 album solos, guitar solos in
Of all time.
in many lists. His guitar work. This is a great album for guitar riffs. You know, I'm just talking about the variety between the songs, but it's got some really great guitar riffs.
Did either of you see the video that was recently made? I think it's the official video.
Like
sort of
not stop motion or drawing, cartoony drawing.
It's like It's like a Ha meet Jethro Tull, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was interesting because
that
video suggests Aqualung is a veteran, doesn't it? You know, I don't know where that interpretation comes from, but it's interesting because that adds an extra layer of empathy / sympathy to the song. But I noticed people's feedback wasn't terribly positive in the comments. Like it's not really, I liked it. I thought it was.
Yeah, I really liked it.
It's an official video, or lots of people on YouTube mock up their own.
No, it was an official thing done. I think someone got in contact with Ian Anderson and said, "Hey, I do this kind of thing. Do you mind if I do it for that?" And he kind of got him in to do it, I think.
I mean, I think you could say for album openers, songs that open albums, this one's a doozy. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It's a hell of a way to start an album. It's not. It's challenging. It's musically, fantastic. It's so varied, like so many. You know, it's a mini kind of progressive rock concept album in and of itself, in just one song. It really is. It's incredible. It really is. It's a hell of a way to start. I mean, as a song, it's a 5 out of 5, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a great way to finish off an album.
Okay, let's do it. Cross-eyed Mary.
Okay, I really like it. I constantly sing this song. I really like it. No, I do.
Musically, I like it.
Yes, a dirty down rock song. Cross-eyed Mary. I love it. And then when you listen to the lyrics, you go, oh God. God.
That's when it all falls apart. But the thing is, when I first heard it and really just would be belting it out, did not even think twice about really what it was about. It's just a fun boppy song about you could belt out about some girl called Mary. Great. How young I was.
Okay, well let's be musically. It's a great song, and it's very popular live still.
Yes, been covered a lot.
Has it?
Yes.
You're right about it being musically. There's something he does on this album, and it might answer a question about what happens to his voice later. But he's got a burr in his voice that's really quite effective. It's particularly noticeable on this song. In later songs, he gets that rough edge to his voice as well, which you haven't really heard previously, and I don't know that you ever hear again. It probably would have been very difficult to do continuously, particularly if his voice was starting to suffer. But I think there's that sneering quality which suits the song, I guess.
Yeah, and I love that.
Really
cross-eyed man, like it's really like I can see it's got kind of a really dirty rock kind of feel. Yeah. It's great from that perspective. It's musically it's really good, and it's really great to sing along to it. Like you said, Adrian, if you don't listen too closely to the lyrics, it's a fantastic song to kind of sing.
I think we're circling it. We'd better discuss it. So I might be very naive. Is schoolgirl prostitution a thing? And was it a thing in 1971?
Yes.
I mean, I hope I'm naive, but it's not something
I think
I knew about at school.
I think you're terribly naive. And this is the problem. The big problem for me is that people turn away from this song because it's horrifying, because it's about a school age prostitute and her jackknife barber, who is a person who performs abortions, who drops her off at school,
which is a recently learned fact. I wish I didn't know, but
yeah, that's right. Okay. And that's pretty horrifying. But it's dressed up with this sort of fun, sly sense of the song, but. So you sort of look at that and think, oh, that is a bit disturbing. But the bottom line is this. In the world, there's many, many women whose situations are far worse than Mary's. And Mary is such a two-dimensional caricature of a character that we have no concept of what has put her in this situation, or what causes her to do things she does, or why she is the person she is, because we're not given that. So we can't judge really what's going on with her life. But bottom line, there's much worse things happening to real people in the world, and that's the part that disturbs me the most.
It feels again like part of your parade of grotesques, Robin.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
And I just wonder, I don't want to explore too far into this, but exactly what it achieves, or what it's meant to achieve, apart from that sort of voyeuristic shock value.
Originally, I think when I was sort of younger and hadn't really thought about it too much, I thought, oh, good on him. He's being brave and tackling a difficult subject matter and getting it out there, a bit like with Aqualung. But because of the things I just mentioned before, I don't think it's either successful or well done at all. Completely opposite of Aqualung from that point of view.
Yeah.
It's not empathic. You can't even read empathy into this.
No, you can't. That's exactly right.
Which again begs the question of what is it?
Yeah, and so it has that Dickensian. It's about the underclass, right? So again, it's absolutely. Do underage girls prostitute themselves? It happens all over the world, and it happens all the time. So that's not controversial in that sense. But I agree with you. The two issues I have with this song is not to do with the content, but first of all, the lack of empathy. So we've just heard a song where Ian Anderson has spent a lot of time giving us empathy for why Aqualung is the way that he is, but we don't. Apparently, Cross-Eyed Mary, her motivations are not purely economic. She's not just doing it for money. She's doing it for other reasons, but we've got no idea why. There's no way, like you say, there's no context around it. She just is the way she is. The other thing that disturbs me about this song is actually not the song itself, but if you go on forums, people kind of get very defensive about why they like this song, and the justifications they give for why they like this song are the most disturbing thing about this song. So some people are like, oh, the 1970s, they were so much more progressive than today, which sort of suggests that, today we're far too prudish, which is disturbing. Or kind of there's allusions to nudge, nudge, wink, wink groupies at rock concerts, so actually the justifications for why people like this song are worse than the song itself. That's the thing I found most disturbing about this song, is if you actually read why people like the song, that's where things get really troubling. Like, instead of people just saying, look, I like the song like we have, musically it's great, but and you find that this exists in the world, but there's some issues with it. They go, oh, no, this song is great because of X, Y, and Z. And that disturbs me more than the song itself.
It's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult,
it's a difficult
I think
song.
If you can, this is my wife loathes this album, loathes it, and this song is one of the reasons.
Okay.
And
fair enough.
But she equates anything pre Songs from the Wood with Aqualung. She just like any album I play before this, she said that's Aqualung. So it's obviously scarred her, which is but this song in particular makes her feel very uncomfortable.
Are we ready to move on then?
Cheap Day Return.
Yeah, this is it's a really welcome change of pace, I think, for me after the first couple of songs. And to me, it's a really interesting, very nuanced song. I mean, I think we've talked about this before, that you couldn't really write this kind of song with this much empathy and understanding unless you've kind of lived through this or something similar. And I think I appreciate it a lot more now that, I'm a bit older and have had to deal with issues of parents and them getting older and that sort of thing. And to me, there's real sort of sadness in there, but also an element of relief as well, that, he's sad obviously that these things are happening to his father, but also a relief that the nurse will be looking after him, even though she seems more intent on getting his autograph than actually looking after his dad. So it's a very, very interesting song, very nuanced song, and I find it really poignant and very good.
I love it. I love his short acoustic pieces, and this, I don't think this is a jarring shift. I think this is this change is I think this song is meant to be where it is, because after those first two very confronting songs, it just pulls things back and just resets the tone of the album, and it's a pointer to how varied and rich this album is going to be. I kind of, it's really interesting, Adrian. I understand, what that level of meaning for you. I really see it. It's really very brief. Is it less than a minute long? But fantastic acoustic work on it. As this album is his acoustic work on this album is fantastic, but it's really I guess it doesn't say anything in particular from my point of view. It's just one of those moments that we all have where you stop and what you've been thinking about. We've had this very in-your-face treatment of the social underclass and the downtrodden and Skid Row, and then you've got this song which is just this moment of reverie. You can imagine him just stopping on the platform for a few seconds and just almost this brief moment of self-reflection and mindfulness, that we all have these in our days because we're occupied with all sorts of things. And musically, it's very short, but it's just... Again, if we're going to talk about progressive rock, I think the music and the position in the album and what it's saying marries very well. It's just a brief pause to reset, to have that sort of brief internal examination and just reset your thinking about the album and about what you're thinking about. I think it's very effective. It's a great little acoustic piece. So
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I love these acoustic pieces, and I think one of the things I regret is there are more of these on the next album, and they were not put together, because there's two of them, I think, on the next album as well. And for whatever reason, they decided to not put them all together, because I think... You
mean the next album? Do you mean
Living in the Past?
Living in the Past.
Compilation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's Nursey and there's Wondering Again. And
looking at the live things, quite often he kind of made a medley of some of these shorter acoustic numbers where the rest of the band had kind of buggered off stage for a bit of a nip of whiskey or whatever, and he just sort of sits down quietly just by himself and just plays like 3 or 4 of these quieter songs, and I think that's really well done. Yeah. But as you say, they kind of fit together a little bit.
I think there's a number of these. There's at least 2 of these on the album, and they just provide a little pause either between much heavier, more confronting songs. They just provide a little break.
It's like a palate cleanser. Yeah.
I've always appreciated that. That's why listening to this album from first song to last is really the way to go, because you get that.
Interesting, because I just find it too much of a shift.
Too kaleidoscopic.
Because it's like it's just like Whiplash. It's like this. I mean, I love Cheap Day Return, and I love the other ones on here. I mean, I'm not a big fan of acoustic folk music in any way, shape, or form. I don't listen to a lot of that sort of music. But I find a thing I love about this is he could have started it from I'm pressed and but he doesn't. There's this lead up to it, which really makes the start of it much more satisfying in a way. There's this beginning bit where you wonder where it's going, and then it hits. And the thing that I love is the very end, because it is quite jaunty, but the very, very end of it, the tone changes at the very, very end. Make what a laugh, and it's do 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 do, and then it goes into this much more reflective, serious tone at the very, very end. It's just this sort of personal revelation brought to life in a song. It's just fantastic. And like you say, Brent, this sort of moment of mindfulness, this moment of sort of self-reflection. Have I done the right thing? Oh, great, I've got my dad somewhere. Fantastic. What a relief. And then, oh, have I done the right thing? It's really well, but such a whiplash from the last two.
But I think that works, and I think it's intentional. And I also think it really starkly shows the breathtaking variety they're going to deliver in this album.
And I think your point about it starting off with that really more upbeat part before it changes then into the more introspective bit. I think that's what prevents it, the whiplash being too strong, if you like. It kind of gently eases you into it and then sets you down, sets you off, pushes you away from the bank in the boat to just kind of sail off in a moment of self-reflection. So I think it's really well done and not jarring at all. So
one of the things about Ian Anderson's acoustic work is how fantastic and his very fast arpeggio work is. And this is the first album we start to see that. It features very strongly on Thick as a Brick, and certainly throughout the rest. And in fact, my favourite acoustic song is on the next album we're going to discuss. But a lot of the tracks on this are right up there. I can't see any link between Cheap Day Return, for example, thematically, and what we've just listened to at the beginning of the album. So it's more of a journey of mood.
Yeah. Although once he's put his dad Aqualung in the home, his dad escapes and goes to Hampstead Fair. Didn't you know?
Okay, that happens.
It's so obvious. Thank you.
I was assuming all these songs are about religion. So we've got Aqualung, the Salvation Army, Cross-Eyed Mary being married, and here obviously the character on the platform is actually God musing about the human condition.
Mother Goose is the Virgin Mother. So Mother Goose.
Now, I was thinking about this for a long time and actually think I finally worked out what it's all about. So
I really wish you'd tell me, because I haven't got any bloody idea.
Well, ever since I heard this song, I mean, it's always just such a fun, folksy, interesting song with all these bizarre things happening. And I was always thinking, but what does it all mean? Is it just a parade of grotesque, as you said, Robin, before? And I thought, no, it must be more to it than that. Just reading the lyrics over and over again.
Yeah.
As I was walking on Hampstead Fair, I came upon Mother Goose, so I turned her loose. She was screaming. And Mother Goose, as we know, is the collection of books, classic stories from, every kid grows up knowing, Cinderella and all these other stories. And what I've suddenly realized was that he's saying he walked to Hampstead Fair and his inner storyteller, personified by Mother Goose, was screaming to be let out. So he said, sure, I'll let you out. So he lets out his inner storyteller as he's wandering around Hampstead Fair, and there's all these weird people. And as he walks around, he kind of internally comes up with stories for what they are and what they're doing. And that's why you have all these weird people doing weird things. It's a bit like if you're sitting, in the park with your kids, say, and they say, oh, what's that man doing over there? And you say, oh, well, that's, Jack. Why is he wearing that black Mac? Oh, he stole that from a snowman. This is the kind of thing that I imagine is going on. So to me, then it all kind of really hangs together then once you kind of
all right, well,
make that initial step.
That works better than anything I can come up with.
Pretty good.
That's bloody idea.
Because I literally always thought this was about Aqualung wandering around, and these were other people. These were other down and out people. That's where
No.
that's
Because there's the workers working, digging up their gold, like Long John Silver. It's all like,
it's all
because I think it was the schoolgirls,
that
folk
fantasizing.
tale type themes.
Yep.
I don't see Aqualung in this at all. What it is again is an acoustic tour de force. That particularly the signature passage in the middle of it.
And the recorders at the start just gives it such hugely folksy.
That's where the recorders are.
Yeah, that's recorders, isn't it? It's got to be.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and apparently they just use school recorders for that. Apparently,
I do love that. That where it pauses and it's just him sort of doing the arpeggio on the acoustic. That very, fantastic piece in the centre. And I think it might be the second time he does that when the electric guitar kicks in. After the second time he does it, is really, really very effective. It's not a pure acoustic number, but it's great to listen to, whatever the hell is going on.
No, that makes complete sense. That he's sort of riffing off people, he's watching people, and he's sort of that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Hampstead Fair. I mean, it was an old fair, wasn't it? In London, yes.
I mean, it would have been, just looking at this, it's sort of like the Easter show, even in the 50s. So there would have been a lot of carny folk there, and it would have been a real mix of class, that kind of thing, and so a real riot of colour and movement. So
I like that interpretation. Adrian.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think
this is
really
conceptual
good.
within itself, but it bears no relation to that I can see, even with the most elastic of attempts to link it to other things. I think it's just.
I don't see anything else. Yep, fun song, and he becomes a bit of a master of the sort of like this little knowing sort of asides he makes that aren't sung. They're just kind of little sort of and whatever.
Actually, that's a good point. It's a bit like on the next album back, Blackpool. There's a similar kind of style, not musically, but this sort of observations of English sort of life, and it's a bit like that. Yeah.
So I think we might have said early on when the not rebellion, but the break with the pure blues ethic, where there was a very English folk. And this really feels like it's heading. Later on, it becomes purely English folk, doesn't it? When we're starting to talk about some of the albums in the late 70s, but there's a real. This is really exploring. Folk and Britishness.
It's super British folky. Yep. I've even got it written here, folksy. So it must be.
Must be. But it's a great song.
Yeah, it's good. Yep. It's very memorable, and it's a great song. Makes me wonder aloud about it long at the time.
Now this is another famous Tull song.
Oh God!
And this is one of my favourite Tull songs.
Yeah,
I love it, and I probably prefer this to its other. I know they sometimes get pushed together in a and I don't quite like those versions. I think it's a bit long and outstays.
Well, they're very different.
Welcome.
I mean,
I think so.
It's like two sides of a coin. It's not really meant to be seen at the same time.
But this is acoustically just beautiful, and it's a slightly sad, but it's a tender love song, and I think it's right up there with "Reason for Waiting" is among his most, which again just is a polar opposite to what's happened at the beginning of the album.
What do you take from it? Is it just like love and acceptance? Accepting someone despite their flaws and that sort of thing, or do you see?
I think there's a little. So I think it's a recognition of the importance of the moments together, and also that it's transient. There's that one line in it and the way he sings it, "Will the years treat us well?" Just wondering about, recognition that in the future they might not have this tenderness and togetherness, but it's very much a celebration of living in those tender moments and appreciating the love you've got and valuing them while you do. And even just the tiny moment to moment things like the smell of the butter and the
spilling
crumbs
the crumbs and shaking their head.
And it's just a recognition of enjoying love and togetherness in the moment, and not recognizing that things will change over time, but you've got to take it while you've got it.
Well, I was thinking the title is Wondering Aloud, but he only actually wonders two things in the song. The first is how we feel today, and the second is will the years treat us well. So it's about like what's happening now, and looking forward, as you say, to will we always be this way. So as you say, living in the moment, because it might not always be like it is now.
And not just his acoustic work, but the strings and the piano are just beautifully integrated into it. So, I've seen him do a very when he's much older, doing it with a string quartet, and it was actually still quite effective.
Okay,
and he could still pull it off.
I have heard him say they played this one to death, but it's a perennial, isn't it? I think I mean, personally, I think the piano or the keyboards in it really add to it. I think once Dean Palmer piles on the strings, it starts to get, for me, just a little bit too cloying, just a little bit too sweet. Right. You know what I mean? It's like eating a piece of chocolate cake, and then after a bit, you just had a bit too much. Yes. I don't think it needed. I think the piano alone, the John Evan piano, adds. I think once you add the strings, it starts to get a bit Mills and Booney. Just a little bit. Yeah. But I mean, that's a small thing.
Yeah,
it's only the giving that makes you what you are.
Yeah, it's the crux of it.
It's just, I love that line, and particularly in the context of the other wondering that's coming up. It's, the idea that if you want to build something meaningful moment to moment, you have to look beyond yourself. You've got to, you can't be egotistical and self-centered and just think about yourself. You've got to kind of go beyond that. But that's what makes you what you are, not some sort of, self-centered ego, which is interesting because we're going to talk about the next song. But for me, that's really such a lovely line.
And according to people on the internet, it's not about any of these things at all.
Oh,
it's
really?
all about.
Oh, good.
It's all about sex. They're in bed, butter running everywhere, and it's like, oh, dear God. So,
oh, really?
He's not with Cross-Eyed Mary, is he?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. That's ruined it for me.
Oh,
maybe the toast is toasted crumpet. Crumpet. So, people, as I say, people will just read into it what they want. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. They've, as I say... They have everyone has their right to be wrong.
Exactly. I was going to say maybe the butter running's a bit of a Last Tango in Paris kind of thing.
Okay. Very, very hard to get the crumbs out of some of those nooks and crannies.
No wonder he's shaking his head at the end.
It'll never be the same for me.
I apologise if that song has been ruined. If it has been ruined, then it was up to me.
Oh boy, this is after what we just heard. This is an ugly song, isn't it? I mean, this is the polar opposite of Wondering Aloud, isn't it?
It's not quite Wondering Aloud. I'll give you that.
I'm not exactly. I don't exactly know what this is about. I mean, it seems like it's just a very
I have an idea.
Egotistical, self-centered man. That's where I go, but maybe I'm reading it wrong. I don't know. I don't think it's clear at all, but I do have an idea. So I really like this. Again, it's as an acoustic, but it's a much more driven song. It's almost back to a bluesy, very bluesy, isn't it?
Acoustic format. It's great, and references the Wimpy Bar as well, which scores at big marks. I think it's him saying, yeah, I'm responsible for things. I'm responsible for the fight we had with Cousin Jack and knocking over all his bottles. I'm, okay, fair cop. I'm responsible for this. Oh, I'm responsible for wearing trousers that are too wide. I'm responsible for your bike tire going down. Okay, well, I guess that's up to me too. I think it's ironic. So to me, I think it's all up to me. Okay, I accept responsibility for leaving you in the Wimpy Bar and doing all of those things. But now you're laying these other things on me, Oh, is it my fault that your bicycle tire's down? My fault that your nose is cold? My fault that this other girl is the smoky fingers, looking yellow girls coming up to me? That's all my fault too, isn't it? Okay, fair cop. I'm responsible for everything then, am I? That's my reading. That's my reading into it. But I don't know, because it's not that clear at all. But that's what I've always...
I go, take her to the cinema and leave you in a Wimpy Bar. This is like, you tell me you've gone too far. You come... So I see this as somebody, this is a man who... I don't think this is about about Ian Anderson or per se, but about a man who feels himself very entitled. He's just doing what he wants. If he wants to take some girl to the cinema and leave another girl waiting for him, he's going to do that. And, the yellow-fingered smoky girl looking up at me, tires down on the bicycle, that's like oral sex, something like that. I'm going to take what I want. Yeah.
Is it?
Okay. Tires down on your bicycle, your nose feels like an icicle. The yellow-fingered smoky girl is looking up to me, yeah. So I think he gets the shit, he gets into fights, he leaves girls, whatever. It's up to me, I can do whatever the fuck I want, and you can deal with it.
How is the tires down on the bicycle oral sex? I'm sorry, you lost me.
Some girls' bicycle is punctured.
Oh, so you stopped to help her, and then before one thing leads. It is the 70s. One thing leads to another, and that kind of thing.
Tires. It's like the pool boy. Tires down on the bicycle always leads to oral sex.
None of that ever happened. Nothing ever happened.
You don't ride enough bikes.
No, in the 70s, I rode bikes and nothing like that ever happened.
And I'm a common working man, half a bit of bread and, a chip on the shoulder, but it's up to me. I can do whatever I want, kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. I thought there was a lot more irony to it. But I don't think it's clear.
It's not.
And I can see that, and I don't think it's clear.
And I would kind of agree with you both, sort of in the middle, but there's also the sort of maniacal or the goofy laughing as well. So I think it's saying, look,
is that Jeffrey?
Possibly. I think what it's saying is that, look, I did some stuff. Some of it was my fault. Some of it wasn't. Nothing's too serious. Let's just move on. And it was up to me. Some, as you say, Brent, some of it was, some of it wasn't. But I don't think it's meant to be taken massively seriously. And there's definitely no oral sex involved. All the stuff about bicycles, total nonsense.
And if it pleases me, I'll put one on you, man. In other words, I'll hit you.
Yeah.
I'll punch your lights out.
When the copper fades away.
Is that what that means?
No, that means when the policeman leaves, I'm gonna punch you. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those kitchen sink drama type ones. It's sort of working class, aggressive kind of masculine guy who just young man thinks he's entitled. He doesn't give a shit about other people. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, the other thing, of course, is that it's clearly God, and. No, seriously, people are saying this, that it's God, and he takes responsibility for everything because he's God, as he should.
Oh, my God.
Buy a silver cloud to ride. I assume they've been watching Monkey. They don't realise it's a Rolls Royce. I know. I mean, it's just people. I bet you're out there on the internet.
I thought it was Aqualung's son. After he put his father away and his father broke out and got lost, he had the shits, and Cousin Jackie had an argument with him because they don't know where Aqualung is.
Oh, well, Cousin Jack is the devil, you see.
Yes.
See, I'm looking forward to the second half of the album where I can actually, with a bit more of a straight face, say that they are religiously inclined, the songs.
Oh, boy.
It does have one of my favourite monogreens in it, though. I used to think it said, "The day blows pirates into glass," which I thought, I don't know what that means. That sounds so cool.
My God.
My God.
People, especially in Anderson, what have you done? I actually really like this song, but I went back and looked at it because it's been in their repertoire for a long time. It'd been in the Isle of Wight. They performed it actually with quite different lyrics, mind you.
Yep.
And the thing that struck me was how fantastic his singing in that Isle of Wight version was. And it's not that brilliantly recorded, but it just starts off with him sitting there playing the guitar, strumming along, and singing is thrilling and really sort of sharp and incredible. He's still doing weird things with his vowels, which makes him sound a bit odd at times. But, I think that's the best I've heard him sing ever in that bad recording from the Isle of Wight. So that's a bit sad from that point of view. So I'm just wondering if that's because he's so lost in the moment of performing, because we know he lost performing, that he sort of forgets to kind of be a bit buttoned down and being recorded, so he actually sings better when it comes to it like that. But yeah, and there's so much to this song. I mean, it's quite long, but it doesn't feel that long to me because there's the guitar, there's the flute, there's the early strumming, and then he goes into that.
Feels pretty long to me.
But then he goes into that breathless choir part, which is, again, a sort of change, and I really enjoy. And it has a bit of reverb on there, so it sounds like it's in the church. Again, just like subtly engineered, not over-engineered. Some of the lines in it, like the bloody Church of England in Chains of History, request your ugly presence of the vicarage for tears. I just love it. I just love the gall of that. So, yeah, that's about it. But it's all about the leaning upon God gently, I guess, and being religious without necessarily being into religion, which obviously in Anderson is grappling with that in this album, if we're to believe the sort of songs that he's singing.
Well, maybe. It's interesting that it is quite an old song, because Isle of Wight predates this by a long time, which kind of knocks on the head the idea that this was created as, the choice of including this song is maybe one thing you could say, but the fact that it was conceived and written and performed long before this album
came to pass,
it really knocks on the head, I think, the idea that this was written as a concept album.
Yeah, and it almost makes us think that, they put this in as like the filler to extend it out because it kind of fitted thematically with some of the other songs, rather than, as you say, to make the whole concept, or that we started from scratch with a blank slate.
This is not my favourite track on the album. Again, it's one that just slides past me while I'm waiting to maybe get to better stuff. The whole band does go. It's like a concept song. It's got all the different movements in it, and it does put all of the band through their paces, and it's got a really interesting gothic and dirgy feel to it, and some good flute work in it. So it's not terrible. I just don't. It's just a little bit musically too, maybe too experimental for me.
Okay.
I find this so tedious. 7 minutes of this, and the thing is, it's philosophically just so shallow.
It's a bit twee. Yeah.
I mean, yes, all right. We don't like religion, Ian Anderson. Okay, I get it. Yeah, I understand. But I just don't have, I am interested in people talking about spirituality and religion, but this, it feels very self-indulgent, and it's 7 minutes long, and I just don't like it. I just find it really tedious, and I just skip it. I mean, I like the fact that he's not, like you said, Brent, that kind of hard atheism that won't recognise the benefits that people find in religion. The positive, not everybody, but some people find great comfort and support within the community that they find themselves in, whether it's Catholic or whatever. So the idea of it's all bad, science wouldn't exist without religion. That's where it started. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be so black and white about everything.
I don't think he's saying that. I don't think that's quite what he's saying. He's
No,
really
he's not. He's not.
really angry at institutionalized religion. He's saying,
Yes.
my God's in me, and that's where I'm. It's actually he's at a point where he's very internalized about it.
Yes, and I have seen interviews with him saying that, that's what he was like at the time. If he wrote those songs these days, they would be much more nuanced. It's a bit black and white for his tastes, if you like.
He does approach his take on institutional religion is a little bit subtly different in each of their songs. This is a direct declamation of the actual institution of religion, whereas the next song is at a particular brand.
We can move on to that now.
To hymn 43.
To me, this seems like it takes 5 or 6 minutes. I don't know why. I don't musically. I don't find it very interesting. The chopping guitar business is pretty good. I love that.
That.
But
I love that. The chucking. He doesn't. Does Martin Barr do that on any other albums? Because it features in several songs on this album.
Yes, it's great.
Obviously, it features in this. It features in Locomotive Breath. It features a little bit in Wind Up. This album has some great riffs, and I actually really like the riff in Hymn 43. It's not my favourite song on the album by a long shot.
That's probably my least favourite.
That chucking guitar, and I don't remember Martin Barr doing it on any other albums. It's just, but it features quite a lot on this album.
I always think of Jimmy Swaggart and Televangelism when I hear this. It's kind of the whole unsung Western hero business. It's kind of hard to escape that, as you said before. I think that American slant to it. So.
Yeah, indeed, which is interesting that this was their single for the US.
Yes,
and
very odd.
It was obviously aimed directly at that sort of performance entertainment type.
I mean, it's pretty woke, really.
Religion.
Unsung West killed an Indian or 3 and then he's made his name in Hollywood to set the white man free. I'm thinking that's pretty woke speak there for 1971. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty progressive view. I do like the boogie woogie rock and roll look to it. It's got that sort of boogie woogie style to the piano and things. I can see why, from that perspective, it would have. And I suppose in the context of the 70s in America, it would have, because there was a big backlash to a more conservative period. But we have got to remember, in 1971, things were fairly, progressive. It was on the rise.
You think it might have gained popularity in its target audience?
Yes, countercultural.
Yeah, I think there's one reason this was made the single, and one reason only. It's around 3 minutes long, and what other tracks on here are there that are exactly that sort of radio length? I'm a bit,
but that might be it. And it does have a good riff, and it's. It just surprises me a little bit in retrospect, because I think there are obviously some far more identifiable and enduring songs on this, but
and I don't hate it by any means. It's just, I think, to me, the song I least want to listen to on the album, I suppose.
I mean, he hints a lot about that kind of muscular white Christian nationalism, which has become in many ways worse in the US. There's a new book, a friend of mine in the US who lives in Georgia has been reading it, called Jesus and John Wayne, and it's I mean, he is a devout Christian, but he's concerned about this melding of white nationalism with Christianity and the sort of, wrestling, men going out and wrestling pigs in the mud. Kid you not, pigs in the mud and guns. And really that's what he's alluding to here. Smile down upon your son, busy with his money making and his women and his gun.
And his
pig wrestling. And so he's already pointing that out, even then, and if things have only gotten worse since then, save us all from this, really. I think I'm also very partial to this song because it's on Living in the Past. Yes.
Is it?
At least the version of Living in the Past I had. It was. I think sometimes they change it. It depends on which version you have.
I think we should go with the vinyl when we get there.
Just checking now, but I'm pretty sure that it's on there.
Yeah.
And so I always knew it more there
because
first.
because it was a single.
Yes.
So, shall we slip on into Slipstream?
Yes. I have a memory of this, Brent, because I remember back in the day when I first heard it. I remember because I didn't know what the hell it was about, but I remember you saying, "Oh, it's about death." I'm like, "Oh, wow, is it? Wow, oh yeah, it is."
Well, man, it's about death,
that's
man.
Right, yeah. Oh, what a sublime song about death it is. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is. It's very much like Cheap Day Return. It's another brief, just a brief pause and a reset. And I love this acoustic piece. Again, it's even shorter than Cheap Day Return,
short.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost 30 or 40
it doesn't have an
seconds
intro
long.
to it. It just starts. You know.
Yep.
It just does. It almost sounds like he was. It's part of a broader piece of music, and he was maybe just ad-libbing, and then he was just recording, and then they've just taken it from here. But it does. It's just one of those. It's acoustically beautiful, and it's just one of those quick. I mean, thematically, it's not necessarily beautiful or comforting, but it's just another quick pause, and it just thematically and musically just is a lovely break to slip into.
Yeah.
Locomotive breath to follow. So,
And I love that he doesn't try and answer any questions. He sort of asks some questions, and he basically just leaves it. Whatever it is you're heading off into, you're leaving all the mess behind you. All the troubles and everything. Any shit that's happened to you up until now, you'll just paddle off into new horizons, whatever they are, and leave that all behind.
it's almost. It's not. It's. I mean, I don't think this is linked to the songs about religion in any way, but it's not a standard Christian view of death, because it really is talking about a loss of self. As you spin in the slipstream, tideless unreasoning. It's about losing that. All the baggage as well, but just losing that sense of self. It's almost like the ancient Greek version of the afterlife. There's a bit of a comfort to that as well, and it's just got that feeling to it. But,
death as an escape is not a Judeo-Christian view of death. You're right.
No,
it's not the idea that that you can paddle out of the mess and drift away. I mean, that is. The thing I really like about it is a bit like Cheap Day Return, is that the ending with the violins is really that's not comforting.
Like a theremin, isn't it?
It's like this kind of like it's really kind of ethereal. I love the ending of it. It kind of
it is
great.
It's not. It shares a theme with Locomotive Breath, and that ethereal drifting off kind of neatly melds into the gentle piano at the beginning of Locomotive Breath. Locomotive Breath is not nearly as comforting.
No.
Well, it just resets you and just slows things down and calms things down to dive into this amazing end of this album. So.
But I think, Aqualung's dad has been going through this philosophical crisis, and then Aqualung dies, and then he goes into a full blown crisis. Clearly, that's what's happening.
Yeah, but exactly. But religious wise, he presses his last dime onto God's waiter. I mean, that's obviously a priest or some godly thing or something to do with religion, surely.
Out of the slipstream, tideless unreasoning into.
Locomotive breath. The shuffling madness of locomotive breath. Is this my favourite ever song? Probably.
Yeah. It's up. Well, I don't know if it's my favourite song, but this is the Jethro Tull song, isn't it? Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Apart from being a favourite, a lot of people, this just is Jethro Tull.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes me stop from saying, yes, it definitely is my favourite, is we've probably got other songs coming up, but also just because I'm aware that it's kind of an easy, popular choice to be the favourite, but I just love belting this out and singing along with it. It suits my voice well too, so that helps.
It's got an amazing riff again with the chucking guitar. It's a shame that Martin Barr didn't use that again elsewhere. It must have Ian Anderson's best flute solo. It produces the way it drifts from the beautiful piano intro into it doesn't drift. Sorry, it drifts from Slipstream into that, and then into what a combination of theme and music. It's driving and relentless and out of control,
like the train itself.
That's exactly what it feels. Yeah, the imagery of this life careening out of control, equated to the train and the way it ties in musically, and a great driving riff. His voice again has got that
really
edgy burr to it that really suits the song. The flute solo is just an iconic flute solo. It's probably his most famous flute solo, and deservingly so. It's an amazing song. It really is. It's the highlight of the album.
Yeah, I love it for all the reasons you just said, basically. Thematically, I mean, before I really thought about what the lyrics meant, I still love just kind of belting it out, and it didn't really matter what it was about, but yeah, it has layers of meaning there too as well, which just sort of add to the interest to it as you go on a bit. But and obviously now we're about to hear why it's terrible, so go on, Lauren.
Oh, look! It's musically, it's a great piece of rock and roll, and I don't know. I think I struggle to really work out because I've seen so many. Like, is it about personal loss of control? Is it about a midlife crisis? Is it about ecological disaster? Because that's what Anderson says. It's about. Yes, he says.
Does he?
It's about, the a bit like what we'll see with Wandering Again. It's the idea that the Earth is sort of on a path to that can't be kind of stopped in terms of ecological disaster, or is it some kind of religious? So I think it's sort of
it's whatever you make it.
Yeah, it is. So I think for me, because I love the acoustic pieces so much on this album. Yeah, this I don't mind this, but it doesn't really. Yeah. And I appreciate the flute piece. I appreciate the music in it, but I suppose for me, I'm less sold on what it's trying to say to me. So I think that's where I get challenged.
Or maybe your life just isn't out of control enough.
Yeah, maybe.
I think this is representative of what I love about the album, is that it's got this just amazingly rocky, riff-heavy tune, sort of juxtaposed against those beautiful acoustic pieces. I think it just, for me, it's just emblematic of the breadth and variety of this album, and it's the proficiency. I wondered for you, because it's got a theme maybe that's a bit similar to Time for Everything, which you didn't like, or didn't.
It was more. Well, I guess the idea of a midlife crisis for me. I think if I read into it, the most obvious thing is it's someone having a midlife crisis, and how have I got to this place, and my wife's running off with someone, and my kids are doing their own thing, and what the hell am I doing with my life, and I can't get off this train, kind of.
All very good questions.
Yeah. But and so, yeah, I suppose there is an element. I hadn't thought of it that way. I just, I don't know. I like I said, it's a great rock and roll track, no question. I just don't connect with it.
But there are people. I don't think this, for example, is lacking insight, because there are people out there. Even if it's not a personal experience for us, I think it reflects insight into personal experience for some people. I didn't know anything about midlife. I always felt, particularly for him reaching for the Bible, I thought he was on the point of. I thought it was near death.
Oh, okay.
I thought, well, I assumed that was just desperation. He was reaching for the bar because he opens it at page 1, so he's only just starting to find religion. The thing that always got me is that he goes on about how he's, the all-time loser and all this kind of thing. But then he is also catching angels as they fall. So, maybe he's a bit too hard on himself.
Is the other thing, are we into wind up now?
Yep, wind up.
The other thing about wind up is that it feels structurally very similar to Locomotive Breath. So the choice of putting them right side by side just doesn't feel, because I really like it. I think it's a great song. I love the riff.
Wind up.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could have just chucked wind up where my God was, and
exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
And maybe have another song to fill in somewhere. Yeah, I'm a sucker for songs that have changes in pace and mood, and this one obviously has that.
But again, it does that with Aqualung too, and it's got a sort of a chucking riff as well. So they feel very similar structurally. To have them one after the other doesn't seem.
Yeah, but
it seems like a bit more of the same.
Maybe, but it does at least start off with that very sort of pared back, just piano and him singing. But yeah, of all the religious songs, this is by far my favourite. So.
Yeah, it's my favourite of the three, and it's more about it's angry, but it's more about it's. I feel like a little bit more insightful. He's not the kind you have to wind up on Sunday.
And it's a bit cleverer too.
Again separating spirituality from doctrine.
And I think it's cleverer too, the way he has have all the bishops harmonise these lines and all that kind of thing. It just sort of, it's hard to argue back against without just being dragged down to his level of pettiness and childishness. And from him as a child speaking about the religion, he can get away with it. But as the religious entity trying to reply to that, you can't really do that without just kind of being dragged down to that level, I suppose, which is not really what you want if you're an august body.
It's a really good line edited. In your pomp and all your glory, you're a poorer man than me as you lick the boots of death born out of fear. It's a very angry line, but it also speaks to what I personally think is one of the purposes of religion, is to provide an answer to what comes after life and to deal with the fear of death. You don't like it, Robin?
No. Again, I found it tedious.
Just because of the lyrically or musically, or
well, that, and I think you will. There's a lot of elements to this song which I've heard already in a number of the others. So I'm just like, oh, can we get to the end now? Then,
yeah.
I'm looking for more shades of grey. I'm looking for more personal revelation. And if I'm not looking for personal revelation, then I'm looking for more storytelling, at least with Cross-Eyed Mary and Aqualung and Mother Goose and those things. Even up to me, he's painting a picture. He's telling a story. These feel that they're too much him laying out his perspectives, which I just don't find particularly interesting. So
it might be a have to be there kind of thing, maybe, and it's hard to share that sort of, it's not quite vitriolic, but that anger and disillusionment if you haven't been there, maybe. But I don't know. So I'm not this angry, but I get what he's saying, and musically I love the riff.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of it, and I would have been very happy to see it if you're going to have one song about this for it to replace My God, and not to be at the end of the album, because I think Locomotive Breath would have been a killer album ender thematically and
bookended
musically.
Aqualung and Locomotive Breath. That would have been great, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Do we have anything more to say about Wind Up? We've wound up.
So, summarising our thoughts on the album.
All right, I'll go first. Well, it's probably not surprising that I'm more lukewarm about this album than I'm definitely more lukewarm about this album than I am of Benefit, which I really, really love that album, and albums which will be coming up. So I think I already said at the beginning, it feels like three separate EPs sort of mashed together, and I think it's because I so love the acoustic pieces, and also I'm disappointed that there are other acoustic pieces which could have formed something, but they've been split up. And I think the sort of Dickensian slices of life work reasonably well. Definitely the acoustic pieces and the revelations are amazing. The God side of the album, I really struggle to really connect with, and I think that's the challenge for me. So and it feels like I said before, it feels like the variation is quite extreme between theme and music. So without any kind of sort of concept-y album idea to sort of link them. So I think for me, I don't mind this album, but it's never been a favorite of mine. And I thought maybe if I listened to it again, I would that would change, but I don't think so. I can happily listen to the acoustic pieces over and over again, but the other pieces I can probably not so much. So yeah, that's where I am, I'm afraid.
Okay. I've always loved this album. It's always been one of my favourites. I think I love the acoustic work on it. As rather than being jarring, I feel that this album has some of their best rock songs, with some amazing riffage, some of Martin Barre's best work, and some of contrasting with some beautiful piano work and some of Ian Anderson's best acoustic work. And rather than being jarring, I just see that as creating a very diverse and textured album that really demonstrates the band's virtuosity and talent and creativity. It's not perfect. As I understand some of the commentary on organised religion, I think it's a bit too strident for me now, even if I was more attuned with that earlier on. And I'm not a huge fan of what you've called the Dickensian type tracks. So, but still musically, performance-wise, and just the sheer breadth of variety and proficiency that's on display in this album, as well as some great hooks and great tracks, it's still a favourite of mine. And I actually think it's very well produced, even though that's the band didn't feel so at the time. There's a clarity to this that is not present on a lot of their other albums. So yeah, it's still a favourite. Not my very favourite, but a favourite of mine.
Yeah, I think musically, if you stripped away all the lyrics from all the songs, I could just listen to it endlessly and it'd be pretty much 5 out of 5. I just love the tracks, the way they're sort of woven together, going from the sort of more rocky ones to the more acoustic, quieter ones, shorter ones to longer ones. I think it's a great mix. But on the second half in particular, across our Mary on the first half, the themes or the lyrics of the songs these days kind of leave me, the religious ones when I was younger sort of meant something to me and sort of helped me come to some level of understanding, but these days I'd rather they rewrite the lyrics and there were songs about something else entirely. So as long as I can sort of turn off my brain a bit and just sing along, belt along with them, I can sing them happily pretty much. But yeah, I think thematically there's a few issues there, and I certainly don't see that it's a sort of concept album or there's a constancy of theme running through it. Jeffrey time. Yep. Robin.
3 out of 5 for me.
I have to give it 4.5 Jeffreys.
Wow, I thought I loved it. I give it 3.5. Musically, I'd say it would be a 5.
I didn't think you were going there.
Where did you think I was going?
I thought you were
Heading all the way to the top.
heading for the.
No, musically, as I say, I think it's worth. It's worth.
Musically, it's great. But
it's a favourite of mine. Yeah.
Oh well, at least we're all agreed on something.
Good.
We can breathe a bit more easily after that review. I'm Adrian.
I'm Brent.
I'm Robin.
Cheerio.
See you next time.
See ya. Bye. So thank you very much for listening. If you would like to leave us any comments or you would like to subscribe to this podcast, and we sincerely hope you do, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can find this podcast at www.threethickbricks.com. You can also hit us up on the Facebook page, which is at 3 Thick Bricks Podcast. And you can also send us a Gmail if you really want to at 3thickbricks@gmail.com. And all of those details will, of course, be in the show notes. So next time, very excited because the bricks are going to be talking about the classic and iconic Living in the Past. Yes, we will be covering the entire Living in the Past, probably in a two-parter because there's so much to discuss and there's so much music to cover. Looking forward to that, but until then, on behalf of Brent and Adrian, I wish you all the very best and see you soon. Bye.